Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're out at the range with the Steyr AUG and the new F90 Australian assault rifle. The F90 is what the Australians have decided to adopt to replace the older original Steyr rifles. The guns are being made in Lithgow, Australia, and Lithgow is a famed factory. They've made everything from Enfields to Sterling submachine guns to FALs to the new F90. What I'm holding in my hands is a Steyr AUG A3. This is the Austrians' most current version. This one has a NATO stock on it, so you'll see that it's using a standard NATO magazine. The F90 currently uses its own proprietary magazine, but it's a Steyr AUG magazine, and even Magpul is making mags for the Australian government. Now, the F90 will be imported into the United States. It will be imported as the Atrax, and that's what its civilian name will be, and it will of course be semi-automatic only. The rifle that we have out here today is actually a machine gun, and that's what's really cool, is we're going to get to play with the actual military service rifle, but I'll also give you guys a sneak peek at what Lithgow will be offering here in the United States very shortly. So let's kick off this video by shooting my old school Steyr AUG A3. Let's take a closer look at that F90 assault rifle. All right guys, here it is, the new F90 service rifle for the Australian military, with the exception that I'm being told that they will issue a 20-inch barrel, and this is the 16-inch barreled variant. But this gun has a number of key differences which we'll go over in this video between it and the original Steyr AUG. But one of the things I want to point out that is very similar between this gun and the original is the trigger mechanism. Since we have the F90 here, which is the true military assault rifle with select fire, the trigger mechanism is a two-stage trigger, so you pull it to a certain point and it'll fire semi-automatic, and you continue to pull the trigger all the way rearward to the second stage, and then it'll fire fully automatic. So watch this, semi-automatic, no selector switch, just a safety right here, cross-block safety. Here's semi-automatic. All right, I don't flip any switches. Now I'm just gonna pull the trigger a little bit further. Check this out. But I could go right back to semi-auto if I want to, just by not pulling the trigger as far. That, guys, is really cool. Anyway, let's take a closer look at the F90, compare it to the original Steyr AUG, and see what some of the differences are. Let's talk about some of the features of the F90 and where they've made changes to the F90's design as compared to the original Steyr AUG. All right, let's start off with the front of the gun here. Right now, the F90, which is the military version, has a 16mm European thread. When they import the gun, the AREX civilian model will have a 1/2x28 thread pitch, so we can use standard muzzle devices. It has a 1-in-7 twist barrel. It's fluted, it's cold hammer forged, and it is chrome lined, and that's going to be true of the civilian version as well that gets imported as the AREX. On this side of the gun, you'll notice it's really different. No longer do we have a quick change barrel. With the original Steyr AUG, you could push a button and pull your barrel out. They've done away with that, and now you have a 1913 rail down here. You no longer have the folding handguard or forward grip. It's been replaced by a 1913 rail. Now it's holding a BCM stubby grip on here, but this isn't part of the package. You can put whatever you want down there. Here we have a sling swivel, which is new. The charging handle looks like a traditional AUG charging handle. This is your forward assist button, but you'll notice that I can now flip that charging handle up and tuck it away when I have the weapon loaded and I'm transporting it. It's not hanging out like the original AUG, which is a snag point. You can tuck it away. When you want to charge a weapon, you pull it down, you pull the charging handle to the rear and lock it up. That's very similar to an original Steyr AUG. When it goes home, flip it away. Coming back here, you'll notice there's a difference in the handguard, and that's because they've included an accessory space right here. You can shoot the gun using this as a fore-end grip, so you have a very tight hand grip. You have your firing hand back here and your support grip right here. But also, if you push on the bottom side of this little block, now you have an accessory mounting point. Now this was originally designed for their 40mm grenade launcher, but I would imagine the aftermarket community will come up with some pretty ingenious things to use in this space. To put this back in, you just kind of put the toe of it in and push until it clicks and it locks back into place. Now coming back here, this is all very familiar to you. The grip angle and everything's the same as the original AUG. You'll notice there's this little tab sticking down. I can push it up or with the tip of a bullet, pop it down. In the opening of the video, I showed you that this weapon had a 2-stage trigger system in it. If you pull it to a certain point, it only fires semi-automatic. If you pull it further, it goes full auto. With this tab down, you can only fire semi-automatic. It will not fire full auto. To fire full auto, you just bump that tab up, and now you have your full auto capability back. That feature, of course, will be left off of the Atrax, which will be the semi-automatic civilian version. Now you'll also notice there's more cooling going on here than the standard AUG. So they've opened this up. This is no longer aluminum. This is all high-temp polymer. On the original AUG, all this structure here was aluminum. They've cut cooling holes here in the receiver. So basically, they've exposed and fluted the barrel to better manage the heat of the weapon. You'll also notice there's a 1913 rail here on the side and a 1913 rail across the top. Now, the side rail is different than even on the A3s. The A3s have a small pick rail, which is just bolted onto the aluminum receiver. This is molded into the polymer. Up here on the front, we have a very similar gas system to the original Steyr AUG, except we now have a bigger tab to get a hold of, and it also has a hole cut through it so you can use the tip of a bullet to get leverage on the gas piston. You can do that to field strip it to clean your gas piston, or you have 3 positions. You have gas off, standard, and adverse conditions. That'll probably stay the same for the civilian model that will be imported into the US. 1913 rail comes back. There's no optic that comes with it. You'll be able to put your own optics on here. You'll notice at the rear of the receiver right here, there's a hump. This hump gives you a smoother transition to the rail, so you have a nice height rail. But also in the future, down here in the empty space all Steyr AUGs have, Lithgow has decided to use this as a battery compartment. They'll plumb wiring up here that'll come through this point and will actually make contact with the rail, and it'll be a powered smart rail. That's not in the current generation rifle. That is for future upgrades, but they've told us that that's what the initial plan is, and that's why it's designed this way. With the Steyr AUG, even the A3, it's the actual pick continuing rail that's cut at an angle that comes down and interfaces with the stock. They've brought the stock up to meet the rail. Over here, we have a brass deflector, which is new. The regular Steyr AUG, even the A3, does not have that. The guns have desperately needed this, so it's nice to see that on the gun. Still has a similar takedown, so you just have a cross block takedown. You just push on it, and the block comes apart. You pull the 2 assemblies apart. We'll show you that when we do our takedown. You still have a cross block safety, safe and fire, just like the original Steyr AUG. Now, one thing that's also different, it releases the magazine just like a standard Steyr AUG, and here's a standard AUG mag. It releases just the same, but you'll notice if I push it flush, the magazine doesn't come out, right? My finger's pushing flush. It's recessed now. The Steyr AUG will release at that point. This one, you have to push the magazine release up and in. You'll see it release the magazine. So I have to push up and in past flush to get the magazine to come out, and that's to address any issues of accidentally bumping this lever and accidentally unloading your rifle. You can't do that. This has a bolt release, which is very similar to the AUG A3, so this rifle locks open on the last round fired, and this would be your bolt release. And of course, then you have your rear sling swivel, which is also your takedown pin, which holds your trigger pack in place. So that's it with regards to the features of the new F90 and how it differs from the original Steyr AUG.
So as you guys know, I like to get out here and shoot with Tim quite a bit, and I am a lefty. The F90 is pretty exciting to me ergonomically. First picking it up, I'm not a huge bullpup guy, but this felt really good getting in the shoulder and just how it sits on the body. The one thing I was concerned about was being a lefty, having the right side eject and getting brass to your face. With the Gen 1 brass deflector here on the F90, it makes it really nice and pleasant for a left-handed shooter. They will have a left side eject bolt conversion available, but you don't really need to worry about that just yet. So if you want to jump the gun and get right on an F90 or the Atrax when it gets into the US's semi-auto version, go ahead and get one with it's going to have the brass deflector on it. There will be a Gen 2 version, from what I've heard, that's going to be more effective, but this is just great how it is right now. So I'm going to show you guys a little bit of full auto shooting with the brass deflector. from a left-handed perspective. Just like that.
That's too much fun. One of the things I've noticed about the F90 while I've been playing with it this afternoon is that it balances very well. So if you put it right where your hand sets, right in the V of your hand, you'll notice that the gun wants to balance out. Pretty much the center of gravity is right about here. So what does that mean? Well, with other guns, with like the X95 for example, most of the weight is back here versus up here. So where other bullpups have a butt heavy, kind of a rearward bias of weight, the F90 seems to have a more neutral weight bias, so the gun just kind of wants to balance out there. So what does that translate to? Well, I've noticed that shooting it one-handed from the shoulder, for example, is very easy to do, which is true of most bullpups. You can shoot it as a handgun, and you can even fire it full auto, one-handed. It's a very neutral feeling gun. The recoil impulse, it still feels like a 5.56, but it's just moving straight back into my shoulder. So very controllable, and every time I shoot this thing, I keep thinking to myself, I hate the NFA. Let's field strip the F90 and take a look at some of the differences between it and the original Steyr AUG. First of all, we're gonna go ahead and make sure the weapon's clear, magazine's out. I'm gonna pull the bolt to the rear, check the chamber. Chamber's empty. Now all I have to do at this point is there's a great big button right here. I'm going to push it across from the left to the right, and now the upper and lower assemblies will come apart. Here's one key difference between the F90 and the Steyr AUG. You'll see how the barrel's exposed. There's no more aluminum receiver here. This is all polymer and lightweight, and the quick change barrel's gone, but you still have the ability to quickly access your chamber and barrel for cleaning. Make sure that your pin's all the way across. Now you can pull your bolt carrier group out. We'll show you by field stripping the AUG here in a second. There are some differences back here and the rear of the bolt carrier. Take your trigger group out. You're going to push right here in the center of your butt pad. You'll push and push the pin across this way, which will then hold the trigger in place and allow you to take the butt pad off. Here's the area where the battery will be housed in the future. Now push on this button. This is the button you're pushing through the butt pad, and pull your pin out, and now you can take your trigger pack out of the gun. You'll notice that the Steyr AUG uses a green polymer on the trigger pack, and the F90 uses a black polymer. And you'll also know when you get your hands on one of these that these have a very nice trigger pull, where the Steyr has a kind of mushy, crunchy trigger pull. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that the black polymer is smoother, I'm told, than the green polymer, which is why they're using black polymer for their trigger groups. All right, so that's pretty much the basic field strip. You can go a little bit further and take the bolt carrier apart. Now this is where there's a difference right back here between it and the Steyr AUG. So I'm going to take this apart by slightly pushing back on the bolt, and here's the pin. You can see how I've slightly pushed that back. I'm going to grab the firing pin and turn it to the left and pull the firing pin out. Now I can push down on this little plunger. The bolt and this little carrier will come apart, and then there's a spring inside, and then this rear plate just drops away. Now you've completely disassembled the gun. You can go a little bit further like an AR-15, use your firing pin, push this pin out, take your extractor off if you want, but there's no need to do that. Also, you can turn the gas piston to its disassembly position and pull it apart, and there's a spring and piston in there. I'm not going to do that. All right, so let's take a look at the difference between the F90 and the Steyr AUG. The Steyr AUG field strips much the same way. Just make sure that it's empty. I'm going to go ahead and take the barrel off. This is where there's a key difference between the F90 and the AUG. Okay, there's the AUG's barrel. It comes off. Push that same cross member pin all the way across. The two upper halves come apart. Now you'll note all this is aluminum, and the barrel is wrapped in this aluminum. All that's aluminum. On the F90, the barrel's more exposed, and what was once aluminum is now a high temp black polymer. So this is lighter weight feeling. All right, we'll set the AUG's receiver aside. We'll go ahead and pull, whoops, there went the bolt. I'll need that. Go ahead and pull the trigger group out. Disassembles much the same way. You'll notice again that the trigger group is green on this gun. Now let's take a look at the bolt differences. So right here you'll notice to field strip this, I have to pinch these little polymer tabs, fold them up, then I can push in and turn my firing pin to take it apart. You'll notice there's a firing pin spring on there, and then the bolt and carrier comes out the front, just like the other gun. They look pretty much the same. Now, some are going to ask, are these the same internal parts? Obviously, there's differences in the carrier, slight differences in the firing pin. Are they compatible? I don't know. I wouldn't assume that they were, but the carrier is definitely different in terms of this rear part design. It does have the rollers, but I wouldn't assume that any of these parts are compatible. Put the gun back together again. You take your bolt, put your spring inside the carrier, stick this little guy in here. Oops, actually got to put the little bolt carrier on. All right. Push him back into the carrier. Hold him back just a little bit, grab your firing pin, push it in. When you push the firing pin, it'll pop that up, and it just pops back together like that. And now we'll put the trigger group in. Now when you're putting the trigger group in, you want to hold up on the bolt stop. If you don't, all that's going to happen is the gun won't lock open on the last round fired. So hold up on that, put your trigger group in, push the pin across, grab your butt pad, put it in place, pull the pin across, take your bolt and carrier, set it down the side, make sure that your cross block pin is all the way across, or otherwise it won't go in. Set the barrel housing unit on there, push it all the way back, cross block pin, and the gun is reassembled. Despite the fact it doesn't have a quick change barrel like the original Steyr AUG, it's still a quick change barrel system, or even a quick change caliber system, because I can quickly go between 5.56 and 300 blackout, let's say. So right now I have the rifle set up as a DMR with a 20-inch barrel, a magnified optic, and a bipod on the pick rail here in the front. All right, I'm gonna put the weapon on safe. I'm gonna go ahead and clear it. Take the live round out. Now I can just push a button, remove the DMR, grab the shorter barreled system, lock it in place, make the weapon ready, and now I can shoot it as a short barreled rifle, or I could change the calibers. Still pretty cool. I do want to thank the guys over at ZQI for sending us a case of ammo so we could play with the F90 today. We're shooting some M855 ball from ZQI, and they package this stuff right. 30 rounds per box. That works awesome. Mag changes are pretty simple with the F90. It's very similar to any other bullpup. So I'm going to go ahead and run the magazine dry on this gun really quick, only because I really want to do another mag dump on full auto. Bolt locks open, so I'm going to reach up and grab it, and you'll see I have to push this button, but I have to go way in, pull the magazine out, strip it, grab another magazine. I can keep the gun on my shoulder while I'm doing this, and then I just come up with my thumb and hit the bolt release, and I go back and fire again. So mag changes are very simple. You do have to strip the magazines out. You do have to push the magazine release all the way up in to get the magazine out. But mag changes are simple, and you can do it while keeping the gun in your shoulder. So very simple to do. Well guys, it's time to tie things up. This was the worst part of my day, but I do want to thank Lithgow Arms USA for bringing the F90s out for us to play with this afternoon. Also, if you would like to support the Military Arms channel, you can do that by swinging by Copper Custom. And if you haven't already, please be sure to check out full30.com. That's full30.com. We've taken all the web's best firearms content creators and brought them under one roof. And again, that's full30.com. Thanks for watching, everybody. And we're going to check out here real soon, right after I dump 84 rounds of freedom. That feels pretty darn good.